Valerie, it's 6:30, but I think let's wait a couple of minutes, that's all. And see if we have, looks like 20 people so far on.
And Chuck, just so you know, there's a chat for you in the chat that I forwarded from someone.
Okay. Sorry. Well,
I know.
well, why don't we get started? Valerie, if you want to do that. We have to unmute Valerie. She's not unmuted.
There we go. Sorry, on the
There,
first
that's
tap,
okay.
it didn't work.
That's okay.
Good evening, everybody. I am in the city of Houston. I won't say the great city of Houston, just the city of Houston. And welcome to tonight's, what was scheduled to be our Land Use Committee meeting, which we are using in order to conduct the Election Committee meeting. So without further ado, I will put Chuck in charge of the meeting. Thanks, Chuck.
Thanks, Valerie. First, I want to thank our committee members, and we've had a very good committee. Michelle Birnbaum, Anthony Cohn, Jane Parshall, and Peggy Price. We met a few days ago to go over all the questions. We appreciate all the questions that were submitted by board members, and we sifted through them. And we basically, just so people don't get disappointed if they don't see their questions, any questions that really concern specific issues, we didn't felt that they were appropriate to be asked. But otherwise, we took all your questions and took a lot of them, actually. And I just want to say we have some timing issues, and so we're going to try to work through that. The schedule I wanted to do was to do go in reverse order: the secretaries, then the second vice chair, the first vice chair, and then the chair. But the chair has some constraints and asked to go on first, and I thought it was only appropriate that we start with Valerie, who's our candidate for chair. So welcome, Valerie.
Thank you for the consideration, Chuck. I really appreciate it.
Of course. We have some questions that were submitted and that we looked at and vetted. And so why don't we get started?
Sure.
First question is, can you share one or more further changes you're thinking about with regard to board operations, including committees and numbers of co-chairs?
Okay. Well, first of all, thank you, everyone. I just want to start out by saying what a pleasure my first year as chair has been. It's been a great honor and privilege to get to know all of you better. And it's quite frankly taken a while to get my sea legs to feel comfortable in in the processes that we have and looking forward at different things. And everyone has great opinions, and you have not been shy about sharing them, which is great. And so I think this is an ever evolving process. I think, and I wanted to wait until we got to this point, and we've been working towards it. I think one of my goals of setting up a new committee would be to get our communications committee underway in a new way, and really looking at that in terms of communicating more directly with the community. I think one of the themes that I've been hearing as I tried to attend at least 1 or 2 meetings per committee in this year is how do we make the community more aware of what we're doing so that we can have a more full participation of the many views that people have in Community District 8. And so I really would like to use the communications committee to do that. And I appreciate everyone coming forward who has some ideas and want to get involved in that. And I think that will be one of the first priorities I have with what's left of this year and really getting it fully underway in 2025. The other item is I just want to applaud the Roosevelt Island Committee. I think they're doing an incredible job to become more involved in Roosevelt Island and making sure the issues that affect Roosevelt Island get promoted and noticed and hopefully get worked on. I want resolved might be too an optimistic hope, but moving towards that. And I think we've done a great job in that. I want to say congratulations to Paul for really moving that committee forward and not making people from Roosevelt Island, but having them really understand that we're doing something and that they are a part of this Community District 8. I also want to think about, we're seeing, we're officially combining zoning, housing, and development. And I think those subjects are really, they cannot be delinked, if you will. I don't know why we were kind of delinking them before, but especially in view of what's been going on with the zoning resolution, I think we will have some very good discussions going forward. And obviously, I'll take this opportunity to say that if you aren't aware, Lenox Hill Northwell will be coming to the Zoning Development and Housing Committee meeting at the end of this month to do a presentation. And I hope that is the beginning of a dialogue amongst the community board and the community and Lenox Hill Hospital. And then the last thing I think we need to focus on, and I've been talking to Will about what the best way to do this is to perhaps get underway an effort with the electeds, with some of the community organizations to try to address the issue of homelessness and to see if we can have a positive impact on that issue and sort of try to meet the needs of the unfortunate people who are living on our sidewalks, and as well as concerns of the community and how maybe we can do something by engaging, faith-based groups, other not-for-profits. So I'll end by saying that that's what I'm looking forward to. But last but not least, in terms of board governance, we're looking at some methodology to see, or technology rather, to increase the speed of our voting. Some boards are using texting their votes, and we're going to look at how we can do that and see if we can make some improvements that way, again, in order to sort of, I don't want to say speed up, but streamline our meetings more. So we'll be looking at that too.
Thank you, Valerie. Next question is, it says meeting lengths are a concern. How would you further tighten board member dialogue while allowing all voices to be heard?
Yeah,
you've already taken some steps, but that's what the
no, I appreciate that. I think it's an evolving area. I mean, everyone is very passionate about their committees, and they want to have everyone understand what's going on. I think we're actually in a very good place in the sense of with Zoom meetings for all of our committees, you do have the opportunity to watch a meeting that you haven't seen. not to chastise our members, but the quicker those minutes get in, it makes it easier for other members of the board to see if there's something they really want to engage in before the full board. So I don't want to put time limits on what people are sharing, but there are a couple of committees that I am going to have meetings with to see if we can streamline their presentations a little bit more. But I don't want to, look, this is a fine line. I don't want to inhibit conversation at the full board, but there are a lot of questions that, quite frankly, do come up from board members that should, you can always call a committee chair or send a committee chair an email before a meeting. If you have questions that you really think need to be answered that may not be, I don't want to say appropriate, but perhaps have that will sort of slow down the full board meeting. But look, the full board is a place that people should feel like they can voice their opinions. But look, I'm open to hearing from people. I have heard from a couple of people about their ideas, but I'm open to listening to more suggestions about how we can reduce the discussion. I know, I thought this worked very well when we went through Coiho and we had one person from each side of the coin, if you will, give 2 minutes on each issue. And, I would be interested in hearing what people's thoughts are. Please don't call me, but you can send me an email as to if you think that might be a way to sort of give both sides on an issue that's coming out of a committee that has 2 different points of view. But again, I'm not trying to inhibit people voicing their opinions on issues. I mean, that's what the community board is about. So that's my answer there.
Okay. What do you think about working with other boards on borough-wide and city-wide issues?
Let me tell you, this is an area that I have been, you guys aren't really seeing it, but I've been really working on with the borough board. In fact, this Saturday, we have been actively meeting offline with the chairs of different boards about issues that are facing each of us, giving us more time. When we go to borough board, I don't want to say things are rushed, but there are 12 boards. And each of them reports on everything that they've done at their last meeting. So it's rather lengthy, and then people ask questions. So we're now taking to have more meetings sort of offline to just discuss different issues. And I really do think that there is, and I have small coffee meetings with other chairs of other boards more regularly than not, board 6. To see how we're handling different issues. So I think that's a really big area for us to try to expand upon, and not only just chairs of boards talking to each other, but maybe trying to see if we can get our committees working on issues. We've been trying to schedule a meeting. CB6 wants to bring a plan that they have for the waterfront or the Esplanade area off the FDR Drive to us. And we've just been trying to find a convenient time to have that meeting. So I think it's really important. I think especially on citywide issues such as Coiho, there's a number of other issues that we've been discussing, but it's an appropriate, I think, we need to see where we can find consensus and work together on a variety of issues. And I think that there is that. And I've been told, we've been communicating more in these last 6 or 7 months as intra-board, intra-Manhattan boards more frequently. And I'm even in touch with boards that are in other boroughs now, especially about Coiho. So
Thank you. How can community boards have a greater role in city governance? Do you have any thoughts on that? That's obviously a big question.
How can they have it? Only through the charter. But I mean, I think we're really pressing, and I think this is a frustration for all boards across Manhattan, is our advisory capacity. And I know that I voiced my frustration at the last borough board meeting, that, you know, we send recommendations to various agencies. We're supposed to be a city agency. And quite frankly, I expressed a lack of respect on the part of other agencies for the work that we're doing. And I've talked to some of the electeds about it. You know, we are volunteers, but we spend a lot of time and we're devoted to our communities. And when I send a letter on behalf of a committee, or when we send a joint letter with me and members of the committee, I think it's only respectful that we receive a response. And I have to say that in the almost 1 year that I've been doing this, I have literally not received one direct response to any of the letters that I have sent. And it's completely, you know, it's just disrespectful, and it just it flies in the face of in terms of advisory, what we're supposed to be. And Will and I were on a meeting just last week talking to DHS about what's happening at the Welcome Center site, and we expressed our frustration about, you know, how, not our frustration, that we really want to work with these agencies, and that we need a better working relationship. And I mean, I remain hopeful that that's the case. I mean, obviously the agencies know that we're engaged, and I'm just hoping that you know, that we do get that respect. And it's not just us. I mean, it's the same thing that happens at every other board. I think, you know, part of it is how we keep our relationships with the electeds, in the sense of making them responsive to us, and follow through with them through the agencies. But, you know, seeing as how there is this community board structure, I think, and this is a frustration that was expressed at many of the City of Yes hearings, that, you know, here we have these 59 community boards, and what is our role? So I think it's through constant lobbying, and letting these agencies know that we're out there and we're actively working on a variety of issues. And that's not to say we do get respect from the electeds. There's constant dialogue with them on various issues, and I think they have been more receptive over the last couple of years to coming to our meetings and to being engaged. And I think for the most part, everyone has had a positive response to our saying, please come to our meetings in person. And I do remind some electeds who haven't come to any of our meetings that we're still patiently and happily awaiting their first live appearance at one of our meetings. So hopefully that some of them will show up.
Thank you. How would you ensure that institutional memory is maintained as term limits approach? That was not a question from me, by the way.
Well, I think there's two things. I think we do really have to start memorializing different protocols and procedures, and putting together sort of handbooks and histories. And I don't mean, you know, physical paper, but maybe how things that have worked in the past, guidelines. I mean, that to me is one of the reasons to having multiple chairs. I did ask for a more refined list of who will be stepping off and how, but I kind of think I'm hoping that as people step off or roll off, number one, I remain ever hopeful that just like we had a charter commission this year, maybe at some point the next charter commission, if there is one, will rethink the term limits on community boards. But I think this is where I think the public members are going to become very important in the next several years. Some boards don't have public members. I've been invited to Community Board 7 next week to talk about our public member process, and because they're thinking about reinstituting it as part of the term limit procedure, so that members who roll off, who do have special knowledge, can stay on that way. But I think we do have to start putting together histories or resolutions, things like that, in terms of our different committees and how we work, because we're really doing a lot based on oral history, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I know that some people, when they actually roll off, are going to want to really roll off. So we need to start doing that. And again, anyone who would be interested in starting to put together that kind of, let's just say, handbook, would happy to have you get involved in that.
Thank you. Going back to what you had mentioned in the beginning about the communications committee, we have CB8 Speaks and then CB8 Zooms. Can you explain the differences between them and how you know what might happen with that going forward?
I think, to explain the differences, one is on Zoom and one of them is on MNN.
Right. That's the main difference, right?
That's the main difference. Interestingly enough, going back to the history of things, there's no rhyme or reason for why they're different. I really, once we get communications really back up and running, I think that's really something that should be administered via that committee, depending on how we're going to use the vehicle. And it should be, whether it's, look, why limit ourselves to CB8 Zooms and CB8 Speaks? There are other community boards that are looking at, podcasts as well. So there are a variety of ways to get out into the public. I think we need to look at, how we're using it, what audiences are we looking at, and I think that's really more of a committee overview rather than just one person, meaning me or the board office looking at it and administering it. And I think if we have a working communications committee that can be, in terms of programming and, what we're showing on, whether it's CB8 Zooms or CB8 Speaks, or if we come up with a podcast, what are we doing? Which audiences are we reaching? And why would we choose to do something on one of those methods as opposed to a committee meeting, which is also on Zoom? So there, a lot of things to be discussed, and I don't pretend to be the know-it-all on that. And I think it would be helpful if we had a variety of people from different backgrounds getting involved in that. So there was, to your point, Chuck, there was no sort of roadmap for why there was one or why there was another. It took almost like 6 months to try to put together how that all came about. And quite frankly, I think you might all find it very boring. So
thank you. Can you describe 2 achievements since you became chair that you're most proud of?
Let's see. I'm very proud of the Roosevelt Island work. I think that we're getting, a lot more participation again. I'm mostly proud of Paul and his group rather than me. It has really nothing to do with me, but I think that's really important that we do that. The second thing is, I think I'm proud of what we did in Coiho, because it took a lot of dedication of members to keep going on that and actually get an opinion out there. And while everyone may not be satisfied with where we came out on it, I think it would have been, I would have not been proud if we had not weighed in at all on it. And we worked very hard on that as a group. And so I am proud of the fact that we actually are in the mix there, and people are listening. I don't know where it's all going to come out, obviously, but I think it was important that this community board was not on the sideline.
Thank you. Last question. What would you like board members to to know about you that might not necessarily be apparent on first meeting you?
That I'm very shy. um, and let's see, that I actually do ride public transportation, because I think there's that I don't drive, because I think there's a misapprehension about my positions about public transportation and cars. And I think the second thing is that that this is only one aspect of me, and let's see, I don't know what else there is to know. That I do other things besides civic activities in my spare time.
Thank you, Valerie. We appreciate your participation.
I appreciate everyone's. I mean, I have to say, as I said in the beginning, it's been a real pleasure working with everyone, and also, you know, I know I don't get back to everyone immediately, but there are 49 of you, and so I would love for you to think that you're the only one who's trying to get in touch with me, but on a regular day, there's at least 7 to 8 people who are texting and emailing me. So please indulge me if it takes me a little bit longer to get back to you. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Valerie. And we're going to go now to the secretaries. And I think one of our secretaries had to leave, but at first we'll find out if she's still here. But Sebastian Hallam Clark, I know, had some time issues and he's not in town. So Sebastian, why don't we'll take it. We don't have too many questions for you, but the first question is there a better way to record board votes than under the current system? And Valerie alluded to that a little bit, but what kind of thoughts do you have on that? You have to be, are you on, you're not coming through. Your sound's not coming through. You seem to be unmuted, but I don't know why.
Yes, Sebastian, you are unmuted, but we cannot hear you. Are you calling like through a phone that you might have muted the phone? No. Worst case scenario, leave and come right back. Let's see if that resolves it.
Okay.
And yeah, it does appear that
Lindsay's left.
Yeah, she messaged me saying that she had to leave at 6:45.
Okay. Let's see if Sebastian okay, he's back. And now
hello, I'm back.
Now we can hear you.
Excellent. Thank you for your patience.
Good. So I don't know if you heard, I assume you heard the first question, but if you didn't, is there a better way to record board votes than under the current system? And Valerie sort of talked a little bit about it herself, but I'd like to get your thoughts.
Yeah, so I guess I come to this with some humility. I haven't seen the other side of the table to understand how the system works. I would love to see if there are ways, as Valerie has mentioned, to use technology to try to speed up the voting process, while of course acknowledging that we want a system that everyone is comfortable with and they feel confident that their votes are being accurately recorded. I think there are also some nice procedural systems that we have seen some innovation with recently. I remember, for instance, with some of the Coiho votes, we used what I think was dubbed Elizabeth's rule, where when we were just trying to flip the position, we were able to flip those votes. So I think a mix of using technology I'd love to explore, and then just having procedures to keep things clear. Another thing I'd love to look at would be potentially projecting up on the screen exactly the question that we are voting on. I know sometimes we do have a bit of confusion about, is this a rejection of an approval or something like that? And that can make members uncertain about which way they're wanting to vote. So just simple things like that to keep things clear.
Thank you. Are you able to attend the vast majority of meetings, and how has your attendance been since you have joined the board?
Yes, I do have every expectation that I will be able to attend in person the vast majority of the meetings. I believe early on in the time on the board, I think I was actually appointed on the day of the first full board meeting, and I wasn't able to attend that one, but I love being in person and connecting with you all.
Thank you. I think that's all the questions we have, Sebastian, and we appreciate your willingness to stand for the office of secretary.
Thank you. I hope I can serve the board well.
Good. So since Lindsay's not here, we'll go to Craig later. Craig, I know is here.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I apologize. I am literally in a subway station, but I am here.
That's okay, Craig. Again, I'll have the same questions that I put to Sebastian. Is there a better way to record board votes than under the current system? Do you have any thoughts? What are your thoughts on that?
I would agree with what Sebastian said, and I do appreciate Valerie suggesting that we can use technology. The only caveat that I would state there is that we do want to make sure that we continue to be transparent and that these are open votes. I think that has always been the spirit of what we have done as a community board. And I'm trying to remember if that is actually within the bylaws that each vote needs to be done by voice. And yes, if we're doing it by acclamation, we know how people are voting. We just want to make sure that that continues. But I think there are definitely ways, and I've seen other community boards do it, where there's definitely streamlining that is possible, where whether it be through text or whether it be if people are in person and have a tablet or have a voting tool, that would be a great addition. Someone who currently tabulates votes, I think sometimes the challenge is just, as Sebastian said, people not knowing exactly what a vote is or whether it is a disapproval, meaning that no means yes. So it would be great if we can project that. I think sometimes it is hard to hear people, and sometimes it's hard to discern yes from pass, as silly as that is, but that's sometimes a challenge. And knowing that we can go, that we make sure that we get back to people that pass. So if we are able to find ways to do that, I think that would be very.
Thanks, Craig. And the second question is, are you able to attend the vast majority of meetings, and has your attendance since you've been on the board been good, and have you been at most meetings?
I am proud to say that I have been in attendance at more than the vast majority of meetings. This year has been a little bit more of a challenge on a few occasions, but for me, a challenge is that I've missed a meeting here or there as opposed to missing many meetings. I think everyone who hopefully knows me knows that I am extremely committed to the community board, having been on for 10 years, and that I prioritize being able to attend every meeting that I am able to, and that in-person meetings have been a welcome, it's been a welcome return to them, and that I have been very pleased to be able to participate at in-person meetings.
Thank you. Thank you, Craig, and thanks for standing again as secretary. So Lindsay isn't here, so we'll go to the second vice chair, and that's Addison Lev. And Addison is here. I see him right now. You're unmuted, I think, Addison.
I am. Good evening, everyone.
Yes. So the first question is, how do you define the role of second vice chair, and how would you interact with the chair and the first vice chair? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I think that's a great question. I would say the role of the second vice chair is to support the first vice chair and the chair as necessary. So that means standing in for meetings that the chair or first vice chair might have to go to, giving advice to the chair, first vice chair about certain issues and how to think through different problems that the community's board's seeing. And then, of course, as a second vice chair, you're a member of the executive committee, so we make decisions on hires, new hires. And so I would say, from my perspective, the way that I would go about it is, for the past 2 years, I've been secretary, which means that I have been primely seated right next to the chair. And so I know how these meetings run. I know how to work with the chairs. I've had a good working relationship with both Valerie and Russell. And I think they see me as someone who they can come to with, or Valerie now sees me as someone who she can come to with questions or advice. And I would hope to continue that working relationship. I also worked with Felice as secretary for a year, and we also have a great working relationship. So I would look forward to fostering those relationships in their positions as first vice chair and as chair.
Thank you. Next question is, if you could change one thing about the board, what would it be?
I mean, I think one of the things that I've noticed just being on the board is that there's a lot of or there's some inefficiency on the board. I think we have some committees that are duplicitous. I think we have some programs that are duplicitous, and I would say one of the things that I would be interested in working on as a vice chair is working to streamline some of the processes that we have as a board. A lot of the stuff that we have is really good, and I think a lot of it could just benefit from streamlining it so that we know exactly, so that we don't have this distinction between CB8 Zooms and CB8 Speaks, so that we don't have, I think one of the pluses of our board is that we have a lot of committees, but that also means that there's a lot of confusion as to what issue pertains to what committee. So I think some of the streamlining would help centralize some of the work of the board and make it a little bit easier for the public to follow and for us to follow as well.
Thank you. You alluded to this before, but if the chair and first vice chair were not available, could you step in to run the board meeting or
Absolutely.
represent the board at the borough board meeting?
Absolutely. I have, as I mentioned, I've sat next to the chairs for the past 2 years. I've gotten an inside scoop into the whole color coding system that Valerie was talking about last time. I have information as to sort of how to run a meeting. And so I would say if I needed to, I'd be willing and able to step in.
Okay. And the last question is, describe 2 achievements since you joined the board, which you're most proud of.
Yeah, so I would say 2 things come to mind. First is very simply with recording votes. One of the things that we had to do, or that we have to do as secretaries, is look to see if we have quorum. And so one of the things is a very easy fix. It was just making an additional line on our spreadsheet to track quorum as we tracked attendance. And that made it easier instead of having to go in and go to the spreadsheet and count every single person who had attended the meeting to see if we had that magic 25 quorum number to start the meeting. It would automatically calculate it for us, which allowed us to start meetings earlier and allowed some of the secretaries to not have to do that very laborious counting process at the beginning of the meeting. I would say the second achievement that comes to mind is my work with the Street Fairs Committee. There's a redesign of the Street Fairs application that we did earlier this year, and streamlining that application process so that we would get more information from applicants about what their street fair was going to entail, whether or not they're going to have food trucks, whether or not they had permits for sound systems. And so that work in streamlining this application process, I think, is able to get board members more information that they need and also cut down on some of the time that we have to ask in committee about different aspects of people's street fairs. So I would say those are 2 accomplishments that I can think of that that sped things up on the board and made processes more efficient for us.
Good. Thank you, Addison, and we appreciate you standing for office.
Very much.
Next, we're going to hear from the candidate for first vice chair, Felice Farber. And thanks to Will and his helping us here, we're going to hear Felice through a video that was recorded earlier because she's away and could not have access where she could be available at this time. And so I'll leave it to Will to do his thing here. Okay. Hopefully this works.
First question, can you see that?
Welcome, Felice. I have a few questions that I want to ask you since you're running for the role of first vice chair. First, how would you see your role as first vice chair, and how would you work effectively with and support the chair?
Well, I see the role of first vice chair as really being a supportive role to the chair and helping out with questions, issues, standing in the chair's place if it's requested or if needed. But the role is to be supportive. It could be attending public forums, like if there's a ribbon cutting for something, or if there's questions about following up on a committee or some questions from the community board that the chair needs assistance with. I view the role as being supportive and being a sounding board, and seeing whatever I can do to be helpful to both the chair and to the committees as well.
Thank you. Secondly, if the chair was unable to fulfill her or his duties, would you have the time and flexibility to take over as chair of the board?
Certainly. I think the chair, it does a lot. And, you know, it's certainly, I have a greater appreciation of all the things that the chair does, but in the event that for whatever reason, the chair was not able to perform their duties, I would be more than willing and available to stand in and to be helpful and to fill the role of the chair.
Thanks. How do you think your livelihood or professional life will influence your role as first vice chair?
I don't think the two are related. And I try to make sure that there's absolutely nothing that would be an impact. I am certainly pro-union and pro-supporting construction being union. But that is, you know, I think that is something that the board or other members of the board are supportive of, but that's part of a larger discussion. But I see the two as being completely and totally separate.
Thank you. Describe 2 achievements since you joined the board which you were most proud of.
I would have to say a lot of it relates to the budget committee and really trying to make the work of the budget committee more impactful. You know, it is one of the few things that community boards are actually charged with having a role in the process. It has been something that has been perceived to be ineffective and ministerial. And my goal is to really try to bring more substance to the role of our budget response, be more detailed, be more engaged in the budget process, and really getting a lot of input from the various committees on what the priorities are, getting input from the community on what their financial priorities are, and then following up to see how we can advocate for those priorities beyond just the written response to the budget information.
Would you have any concerns about representing the board before city agencies if the chair is unavailable, particularly if you disagree with the board's position on a particular issue involved?
The board takes a vote on what its priorities are. And so if I was asked to present before a city agency, the position would have to be what the board is voting on and what the board's position is. It would not be whatever my personal view is or how I voted on that, because that's not relevant when you're representing the board. The point is the position that the board has taken and effectively representing the board's view on something, not my own personal views.
Thank you. If you could change one thing about the way the board operates, what would it be?
You know, that's a good question. And I think a lot of items have really been tackled. I think doing a good job on trying to make the board meetings more effective or more streamlined. A lot of the work happens in the committees, and I think we need to be engaged in the committee activities if we want to really weigh in more detail on some of the issues. But I think there has been a good focus. I know one of the things that I personally like is kind of more detailed information in the committee meeting minutes, so that if I haven't been able to attend a meeting or watch a meeting, on a separate time, I like to be able to read through the minutes and really get a good handle on the issues and what's been presented. So I think the board is doing a good job. And so, not to sound like Kamala Harris, but I wouldn't necessarily change something.
Last question. Are you running for vice chair in anticipation of running for chair?
No.
Okay.
I,
Well-
I view the role as being supportive of the chair. And I defer to the chair as the leadership.
Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you for participating in this session, and thank you for putting yourself forward for the office of vice chair.
Thank you. And thank you to everyone on the board.
Thank you. So that concludes all of the questions for the candidates, and I want to give a special thanks to Will, who helped put all this together with everyone's changing schedules, and even we held our meeting on the 11th, which was a holiday, and Will came in to help us facilitate that, and we appreciate it. And so the next thing that the elections committee will be involved in is the election itself, and that's at our meeting on November 20th, next Wednesday. And all the candidates will have some time to speak, not very long, and then we'll get to a vote on each of the candidates. So we appreciate everybody who came to hear the candidates answer the questions that were put together by our committee, and also take into consideration a lot of the questions that came from the board members. So with that concludes the elections committee part of the proceeding. I don't know if Valerie's still there, or whether we want to conclude the meeting at this point. Okay. Maybe at this point, we're essentially adjourned. And see everybody at the meeting at next week. Thank you. Take
Thanks,
care.
Chuck. Sorry, I had to step away. Thanks.
That's okay. Okay. Take care.